Welcome to another edition of the Daily Deuce. I'm Gary Graves from just outside Louisville, Kentucky, and in Maryland, where I'm assuming it's warm, much like it is here. John Webster, my longtime friend and esteemed colleague. How you doing?
Hey Gary, I'm doing real good, man. And it's a warm day here. Doesn't feel like mid-March, it feels like mid-May. But I tell you, be careful because it could turn back to mid-March just like that. So you gotta be careful.
Oh, trust me, it will. It's supposed to here sometime by the weekend. So,
Hey
yeah.
man, we can't forget before we get grinding. Hey John Pitt, how you doing?
Doing pretty good, guys. We got Selection Sunday coming up.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And
Yep.
yeah, we're going to try to talk about NFL free agency and John, if there was a way to maybe kind of, send you a care package or something after losing Pollard, I'll do that.
Nah, I'm good.
Okay. All right. All right. Yeah, NFL free agency has been pretty wild, so I can't wait till we get to that. But really, I can't wait to get to Selection Sunday. In these parts, everybody is keenly tuned in to Kentucky at the SEC tournament. I think we could be looking at one of the number one seeds coming out of that one in number five, Tennessee. And I'll just go right into it, John. Who's your number one overall seed?
If it stays the way it is right now, Gary, I would say it's Houston. UConn is up there. They're going to be a number one seed. I think Arizona out west, if I'm not mistaken, should be a number one seed. Um, Purdue is always there, but I always find them to be very shaky once the games get started and you get past the first or second game. But I think overall, I think it'll be Houston. I really do. I think their work, their overall work this season shows them to be the number one team. But this is going to be a very interesting tournament. You mentioned Tennessee. Tennessee's going to be up there fighting for a number one seed too. I think they can only solidify themselves more by winning a few games in the SEC tournament, if not winning the SEC tournament. But as I
Yeah.
said last week, I like Tennessee because, in my humble opinion, they're the only team in the SEC that plays offense and defense.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Which, from my view here, it was a little surprising that Kentucky went down there to Knoxville to beat them. Even though Kentucky goes in on a roll, with 5, 6 straight wins, but I still think Tennessee has just been consistent, and as you said, they play on both ends and defend very well. That's a thing that I think when the deeper they get into the tournament, of course, they won't start until the quarterfinal round, and the final will wrap up just a few hours before the selections go out. So my gut tells me if they win 2 games and make it to the final, that they probably solidified their number one seeding no matter what happens. And
yeah,
again, here I think people they're less focused on seeding. I'm gonna say than where Kentucky is seated, like which region, because of course they would love it if Kentucky was a top 4 seed and perhaps going to Indianapolis, just up the road. But I still feel like because of other conferences that have made cases, to be high seeds as well. Kansas ain't one of them, but I think in Indianapolis, if Purdue runs the table, they'll probably be the number one seed and just 30 miles down the road. So it's just going to be interesting to see. I like this field right now as it's kind of projected because probably more than any recent year I can think of, is really a lot of balance between the conferences. Of course, every year I think we kind of see the cream rise to the top and we see a few surprises. But just looking at the teams at the teams that have really made their cases, I'd say anybody is capable. It's really balanced. And again, the surprise of the tournament is that you just don't know what you're going to run up against.
I agree with you, and I'm just sitting here looking at my notes about the NCAA tournament. I think also when I look at it more, and I have a chance to think about it as you're talking, I think that fourth seed is going to be a running contest between Tennessee and North Carolina. I think whoever goes further in their tournament will get it. I'll go with my first three: Houston, UConn, and Purdue. And the fourth seed is either going to be Tennessee or North Carolina. I think it's going to be based upon who goes further in their tournament. That's what
You
that's what I,
mentioned Arizona. You're not real keen on Arizona out
I'm
west.
keen on them, but I'm looking at my notes, and North Carolina and my notes and Tennessee are further along ranking wise than Arizona.
Mm-hmm.
Arizona's in the top 10 without a doubt, but Carolina and Tennessee, I think, are going to be fighting for that fourth spot. And Carolina's playing today. They were at halftime, they were up all 15 on Florida State. I just think whoever goes the furthest, and if they both go all the way and win their respective conference titles, then that committee is going to have to sit down and figure some things out. But I think whoever goes furthest in their conference tournament is going to get that fourth seed.
Yeah. Um, the playing games, I always think are interesting. People talk about, well, those are kind of throwaway games. I don't even know how many, how many pools really include those games. They wait until Thursday when everything starts in earnest. But I always like watching those games because those are probably the four hungriest teams in the field.
Mm-hmm.
They're happy to be in that first four, but then, they're still happy to try to get to, say, the weekend, which is entirely possible. And I'm thinking about teams like, say, maybe, Norfolk State, Grambling, HBCUs. Possibly making some noise. And of course, we've seen Hampton do it before. We've seen Howard be competitive in the past, and I'm just really intrigued by those lower seed games because again, you're going to be a number 16 seed or number 15 seed, but that doesn't mean you can't do anything.
Yeah, we had a playing game one year where VCU ended up going to the Final Four. You remember that when they had
That's
Shaka
right.
Smart?
That's right.
And you've had, even before you had the playing games, you had some 15 seeds do some things. One year, Richmond knocked off Syracuse many years ago as a 15 seed. You've had Coppin State. I remember the year that who did they beat? I can't remember who they beat. I know in the second round they lost to Texas, and that's when
Mm-hmm.
Fang Mitchell was coaching. Oh, they beat South Carolina. Yep, they beat South Carolina, and then they
Okay.
lost to Texas in the next game, and almost beat Texas, to be honest with you. So, we've seen some Hampton. Hampton as a 15 beat Iowa State. So it's exciting, man. I can't wait until it starts up, man. I just am. I'm like a pig in slop in Salisbury, man. I'm just really, really happy. I'm just really, really happy.
I thought I thought Salisbury was famous for crabs, seafood, man.
Crabs, pigs, chickens.
Okay, in that order.
Well, depending on what I'm hungry for, all depends on the season.
Speaking of chickens, well, we'll talk about that a little in depth later. You're gonna be one of those guys, and when you retire, that's gonna like have a backyard full of chickens, which seems to be the thing now.
No, no, I'm just gonna have a little backyard with my grill and do my best to stay out of Kim's way so I don't disturb her because she says she's going to work until the very end. That's not going to be the case for me.
The very end. Ooh, man, no, not till the very end. She's got to have some years, man. Come on, got to have some years to spend with you on that in that backyard, with the grill.
we'll see, man. I know for me that end is coming a lot sooner than you think.
Yeah. I guess in terms of tough choices the committee has to make, and I guess we're talking about bubble teams. Do you feel like maybe the bubble is a little bit more defined this year, or let me rephrase that: the bubble teams, they really aren't bubble teams, that they pretty much have kind of locked themselves in the spots. And one that stands out for me is Mississippi State. They've been trying for what, almost 2 weeks to get that 20th win, but they've had some quality wins. They're a team that has played like the Auburns and the Tennessees, fairly tough, and they just haven't gotten over the hump. So I'm just wondering, from your view, is the bubble really even a thing this year? That like say some teams have pretty much locked their punched their ticket.
Well, I look at the bubble the same way every year. The bubble is dependent on what happens in these conference tournaments, because every number one seed in a mid-major who doesn't win that tournament and that conference only has one bid, that's another nail in the coffin for a bubble team not to get in. So I watch carefully with the mid majors, seeing if examples. Who was that the other day? I can't think of the name of the team. They're in the same conference with Sanford. They're in the same conference with Furman. They ended up winning their tournament, and that's a tournament. Southern Conference is only going to take one team. So if they didn't win, then that's a knock against Mississippi State, because they're not taking two teams out of Southern Conference. They're only going to take one. So I watch the mid-major tournaments to see if the brackets stay on chalk or if you have some upsets.
Yeah. One conference I always thought was intriguing, and I think this played out the other night out west with Gonzaga and St. Mary's, and St. Mary's beat them, and I heard somebody on the radio say that they have faced each other something like 17 times in the conference tournament. I mean, yeah, they've met 17 times in the conference tournament. Gonzaga has dominated. I think it's like something like 14 wins, but that is something. When teams can be just that consistent and face each other, I don't know what that says about the WAC, but yeah, I just thought that's one reason why you have a conference that you think would be a one bid, like say with Gonzaga, and St. Mary's is always good enough every year to get to be like one of I mean, they're locked in, that they give one of these so-called mid-majors or second tier or group of five, however you want to describe it, how they make a case every year for two bids, and they'll have two this year.
They'll have two, but this isn't a strong Gonzaga team this year. St. Mary's won the West Coast Conference championship. Gonzaga is good, but they're not great. So St. Mary's is better, but I don't see either one of them being potential Final Four teams, neither one of them.
Yeah. The team I became a fan of last year because they were here in Louisville, and they toppled number one overall Alabama, and that's San Diego State. And if you recall our conversations from before, the impressive thing about San Diego State, one, is their experience. With a lot of those transfers who have stuck there 2 or 3 years, they've used the transfer portal well. They've bought into the system. They play well together, and they're basically just grown men. And that was the one thing when they faced Alabama, and within 5 minutes of that game, I think San Diego State just knew, or just felt like, yeah, we can beat them, because they looked like a bunch of scared kids out there because they not literally speaking, but figuratively, they kind of punched them in the mouth. They weren't awed by all that young talent. They weren't awed by the speed. And if anything, when we talk about defense, San Diego State, it wasn't so much about defense. It's just that they were so physical that they didn't have to do too much to really throw Alabama off its game. And that's a team that I've been watching, and I think they've got a good shot at getting back in the field too.
They do. They're a really good team. I think that's Brian Dutcher, who's coaching
Yeah,
over
Brian
there at
Dutcher.
San Diego State. They're just a very physical team. Their physicality took over against Alabama last year, and they're still a physical team. And they are dangerous, just like Florida Atlantic. They moved as Houston moved out of their conference. Florida Atlantic moved into the conference with Memphis. So, and Florida Atlantic has done well in that conference. So,
Yeah.
those are two teams that you got to watch out for in this tournament.
Yeah. Well, it's funny you mentioned Florida Atlantic because their coach has been mentioned as a possible candidate at Louisville to replace Kenny Payne. And I guess what Florida Atlantic was what the surprise last year, getting to the Final Four, if I recall.
You're right.
And yeah, and that's that's one of those teams that always scares me. The ones that, and especially since they're playing in an upgrade of a conference as well. That's a team you really don't want to see in the tournament right now because they can score. They can they're pretty good at defense too. Um, and people I think tend to overlook them because they're in again. Not I hate to use the term mid-major. I'm just going to say again that group of five, that next tier of conference, like the Ohio Valley Conference, Missouri Valley Conference, the MAC, the ones that we see almost the same teams in there, the same group of teams in there every year. We don't want to say that they beat each other up and that but in essence, they do kind of beat each other up because you could pretty much switch any name out, either from Michigan or Ohio or somewhere, and not surprised to see them. But FAU is just one of those teams that if they're in my bracket, I'm thinking, ooh, man, I don't want to face them.
I don't want to see him either. And I know Florida Atlantic would hate to see him go to Louisville, but we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. But Gary, before we go too far, that women's bracket is going to be exciting as well. What do you think?
Yeah, yeah, as always. Obviously the line starts behind South Carolina, which somehow they've been stronger with a new lineup. The freshman. So all of a sudden, I'm forgetting her name. I got to start taking my Neriva or something like that. Yeah, Michaela. She's just been really a catalyst. And remember, this team has won something like 5 or 6 games without their big girl while she was playing for Brazil, Camila Cardoso.
Mm-hmm.
That the depth on that team this year, everybody thought last year's team was really deep. Those players have gone to the NBA, WNBA, and essentially she's remade the roster, and yet here they are. They haven't always been dominant, but they've been resourceful, and I think that really means something, especially when you get to this point in the season. And much like the men's side, it's a little bit. I'll say matchups mean everything, in both tournaments. But I think you see the same teams kind of flex their
Mm-hmm.
muscles this time of year. South Carolina, obviously, being one of them. But I think because of the vulnerability that they've shown with not exactly being dominant, that I think for some teams, like if you're like maybe an 8 seed or something, and you get to face them in a second round or something, where you feel like you've got a chance. What do you think about that?
Well, hands down, South Carolina's the best thing there. I think this team this year is more scrappy than last year's team. Last year's team was more talented. This year's team is deeper and more scrappy. That's my thoughts there. I
Hmm.
think Iowa is somebody you got to contend with. Um, Caitlin Clark is she's Caitlin Clark. She's unbelievable. But she has some other players there. Stelky, Gabby Marshall, Martin.
Mhm.
They all, do a great thing. Stelky is a key contributor inside. She controls that middle and she gives them a good low post game. So
Yeah.
I see that. USC, I think will be since they beat Stanford in the Pac-12. I think USC will be a number one seed. Juju Watkins, that's a fun game to watch her play.
Yeah.
And the fourth one, I'm thinking it may be Texas, Gary, because I can't see
Mhm.
Stanford. I can't see two Pac-12s. And I'm going to tell you right now, I'm going to say it. They are a year away, but you watch the Fighting Irish. You watch them. This is not their year.
John,
This is
John,
not their
I
year,
don't
but
know.
Hidalgo is unbelievable.
Yeah, she is. And John, because you just said that, I'm not sure if they're going to wait till next year because they're really starting to play their best ball when they need to. Going through the ACC, doing what they did. I don't think anybody saw that coming. Of course, maybe to your point about being a year away, it could just be because they don't. What does it say? They don't know what they don't know. They don't know how good they are yet. That they're just kind of playing with house money and such. But I understand what you're saying because when they get Olivia Miles back next year, I mean, I'm just thinking, whew. And you
Yeah,
figure there'll be a fall off at Virginia Tech with a number of players, including Elizabeth Kitley, that they lose. Say Louisville, is got some. They've got some coming back. We don't know what they're gonna get from the freshmen from the portal. And NC State, I think, is kind of question mark as well. But if I had to really handicap for next year, obviously it's Notre Dame, but they are so good right now that it would not surprise me to see them in the Final Four without Olivia Miles.
yeah, they're tough. They just won the ACC tournament last weekend to beat NC State. They're tough, but like I said, they're a year away. They're a year away. But can you think about this? Olivia Miles and Hidalgo on the same court together.
Mm, yeah, and just looking at Hidalgo, like I mean, she's kind of she'll be the point guard. Olivia
Mm-hmm.
Miles, who played point, but she's going to be even more dangerous playing on the wing because she can rebound. She can defend. Inside and outside. She's capable of handling the point, but she just shoots so daggone well. Remember, she did her NCAA tournament debut was, if I'm correct, was like a triple double, which hasn't happened.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that's men or women, which is very, 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 very impressive and very, very scary. And of course, she'll be fully recovered by then, as they expect, and obviously rested. And again, it's like that team. I can't wait for them to be at full strength, but I think they're capable of going deep this year.
We'll see, man. We'll see. It's going to be interesting. We will see.
Yeah. All right. Let's move over to the NFL free agency. Having started up in earnest Monday, we've already seen some significant moves. The two that really stick out to me is Derrick Henry to the Ravens and Saquon Barkley to the Eagles. That was really the one that shocked me. Which ones were big for you, man?
Well, I think for me, Saquon Barkley to the Eagles is a big move. I think that helps the Eagles. The Eagles have made some really shrewd moves. They brought back what's the guy's name? C.J. Gardner. They
Yeah.
brought him back. You got Saquon Barkley. Matter of fact, Jason Kelsey said that's why he really hates the fact that he was going to retire, because he wanted to be part of something fun like this. And I think they're going to be fun. I think they have a lot that they've done. I'll also say this in the NFC East.
Oh boy,
I
here
think
we
the
go.
Washington Commanders have made some very shrewd moves. They've signed Bobby Wagner. They've brought a lineman in. They re-signed Jamison Crowder and another kid. They also got another linebacker. I think they're going to, and they brought in Marcus Mariota. I think the Commanders are going to be really dangerous this upcoming season.
Yeah,
Now,
but how, John, have you looked at the ages of some of those guys?
yeah, I know that they got a long tooth. You're right, but I guess part of me is I'm just excited that it's actually football going on with the Commanders and not a soapbox opera and not a bunch of mess. I'm just excited.
Yeah. Well, I'll say this. Commanders fans hope that that's not the case. Because right now, yeah, I still feel like they're the biggest mystery, um, maybe outside of San Diego. Which I mean, I know your boy Coach Kaki is out there. I know he's going to put his thumbprint on that team, much like he did in San Francisco, and much like he did with your team up north or your former team up north. But Washington, yeah, I just want to see the needle move. I don't want to see that that predictability. I want to
I
see
I,
some
th-
hope. Coming
I
from the
think that
Commanders.
I think
I
they
just
will
haven't
make it.
seen it yet.
I think they will make it move. Like I said, I like some of the moves they're making. They're shoring up the offensive line. They're plugging up holes on the defensive line. You're bringing in linebackers. I think and the running back Eckler that came from San Diego.
Mhm.
Also, you're bringing in players who are good at leadership. So Eckler was a captain with San Diego. So this is good stuff that you got going on. Um, the other thing that I'll say, you mentioned Derrick Henry. I think Derrick Henry, hear me all the way out, Gary.
Mhm.
I'm not as excited about the Derrick Henry move with the Ravens as others are. Let me tell you why. The Ravens did not have a problem with the running game.
Exactly.
They were one of the leaders in the AFC, if not the NFL, in running. Gus Edwards did a great job. The question mark about the running game has come about, but I think it's a false question mark because it's based upon what happened in the AFC Championship. Baltimore chose to throw. Baltimore chose to throw. Let me say it one more time. Baltimore chose to throw the ball. They chose not to run it. If you run it, I think it's a different game. And they did not run the ball. Derrick Henry, I take nothing away from him. He still has a year or two left in his tank. But that's not, in my opinion, what Baltimore needed. You have a good running game. You just have to use it, which they failed to do in the AFC Championship. So the signing of Derrick Henry does not get me excited. It doesn't lead me down a path where I think this is the missing piece. It's not the missing piece. The missing piece was you didn't use your running game. You have a running game. You have Gus Edwards. Now the question comes up now, what are you going to do with Gus Edwards? Are you going to keep him? You're going to take his touches down? I mean, what are you going to do?
I'm trying to remember. Did Gus Edwards go anywhere?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I can't remember.
and maybe I'm thinking about Pollard going to Tennessee as the as like they lose a Derrick Henry, but they get Pollard
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know how much hand wringing is going on in Dallas over that one. That was a little bit of a head scratcher about letting him go, but you know. If we could bring Pitt in on this, I would love to hear it. But that's probably something we'll talk about off air.
Yeah, I don't think John really wants to have any type of confabulation about Dallas at this point in time. I know
Mhm.
I've talked to Dante about it, and he just finds them to be a very backwards organization right now. My thought on the Dallas Cowboys, and I asked Dante this morning, could all this be leading to Jerry Jones trying to trade Dak Prescott and going with Trey Lance? Could all this be leading? Because you let Pollard go, but then there are 4 running backs you did not get: Aaron Jones, Derrick Henry, Saquon Barkley, Joe Mixon. That's 4 running backs you didn't even get.
Yeah.
And you're going with this guy, Deuce Vaughn. I think Deuce Vaughn is a good situational back, a good third down back, not a good every down back. And I think this is why it makes me think. They have so many players that this is the last year or whatever, and they are, last dance and all this kind of stuff. They may not have the money if they go, once they sign Dak Prescott, they may not have enough money, even though the salary cap is going for $250 million. They still may not have enough money to address everything else. So maybe Jerry Jones is going to roll the dice, find a team that Dak Prescott likes, and they can move him on, get some draft picks, get some players, and they roll with Trey Lance. Now, I'm not saying Lance is the answer, and I'm not saying Lance is better than Dak Prescott. I'm just saying maybe this is what Jerry Jones is trying to do.
It's a valid question. I think that the term with the word that comes to mind with the Dallas Cowboys right now is they're being counterintuitive. All of the things that really could help them, they're not doing those things. They're doing things that really are against their best interests. And I'm just going to leave it at that. Now back to Derrick Henry to Baltimore, John. I couldn't agree with you more on all those points. It's like I'll use a car analogy. If you got a good vet in your garage or something, if you can afford it, it's nice to have another sports car, like a Mustang GT, and that's just my Ford prejudice coming out. But again, if you've already got a solid back who you didn't use, and again, when we both go back to the AFC Championship, it's not you said they threw the ball. That was a coaching mistake, a huge coaching mistake, and I think it cost them a chance when the window was like right there. Now, of course, we have to see what Kansas City does in free agency to reinforce themselves. But again, nobody, with all this, with all the speculation or whatever, like all the discussion that we do about who's there to possibly topple the king, and I think the possibility was there this year, and yet Kansas City wins another Super Bowl. And I feel like, okay, they might falter next year because we haven't seen a three-peat, but somebody has to step up and show that they can do it. And if Kansas City falters, again, this opens the door for somebody else, and they have to do everything possible to do that. Baltimore blew a chance. San Francisco blew a chance. And they might have beefed themselves up with Henry. I do think he's a good addition in terms of, just a proven commodity, a guy who, as you said, still has a couple seasons left. I think he's got more. But again, it's just how they use him. And that's always the question mark with some of these offensive coordinators, where you've got these, bruising backs, or Joe Mixon or something like that, and you try to be cute and, and throw the ball because you figure, that's, they won't see that coming. Well, they're thinking pass first. They're not thinking shutting down a run game. And that's where, again, you establish the line of scrimmage with smash mouth football. That's my old school talking.
I totally agree with you, Gary. I totally agree. I couldn't have said it better myself. And we'll just have to wait and see what happens this season.
Yep. Well, John, we got a big weekend coming up. Again, a lot of these conference tournaments are going to wrap up. I think there's even a couple of women's tournaments still going on. And hey, look, we say grab your popcorn, make some pizza, or order pizza, get some wings, be ready by 6 o'clock on Sunday evening to see how it shakes out and get those brackets ready. So, folks, watch all the sports you can because there's a lot going on. And of course, I think by this time, LA and the Golden State Warriors will have played for about the 11 millionth time this season on a Saturday night. So I want to see how that one turns out.
Hey, as Gary said, get your popcorn, get your hot half smokes, get your fried wings, your chicken wings, get
Oh,
your pizza, get
absolutely.
all that stuff. Get all that stuff. Enjoy yourself. Get some bread pudding too to have it, and a nice ginger ale to wash it down with. Don't tell Kim I told y'all to eat all that though. But watch some sports. Watch the women's basketball. Watch the men's basketball. Watch some NBA. Enjoy yourselves and come back and see us real soon. Take care.